In the heart of an old southern city, there stood a school where whispers carried more truth than announcements. Brielle Jefferson walked those hallways every morning, her sneakers quiet, her breath quieter still. The Jeffersons had lived in Charleston for 4 generations. Their roots ran deep, but never thick enough to stop being trampled.
It was there again. The word, scratched into my desk, 5 letters, etched like a scar across wood. No one said a thing. I looked at it, they looked at me, and the room just kept going. I wanted to scream, not for help, for recognition, for someone to admit they saw it too.
In history class, the textbooks described slavery as a necessary labor system. Brielle raised her hand. Necessary for whom? The teacher froze. The class froze. That's just how the curriculum frames it, he mumbled. And again, silence. Brielle sat at the kitchen table, knees pulled up to her chest, the scent of cornbread and collard greens floating in the air. Her grandmother stirred a pot on the stove, humming softly. "They won't protect you," she said without turning around. "But you don't need their protection to speak the truth."
I took a Sharpie and made a sign, just 3 words. We are here. I didn't invite anyone, didn't post online. I walked alone, from school to City Hall. No chance, just my footsteps, just my heartbeat. People stared, some laughed, some moved aside, but some, they joined.
By the 3rd day, the crowd had grown. 50 students, then 100, teachers, parents. One woman brought a megaphone. A boy came with a guitar. The silence cracked. Brielle never stood at the center. She stayed on the edge, watching others raise their voices. That, she thought, is the beginning of justice.
The school suspended me, disrupting learning. They handed me a pink slip with cold fingers. I walked out smiling anyway. My mama cried. My grandma didn't. She just nodded and said, "Now they know your name."
The school's Black Student Union room was torched 2 nights later. Burnt books, melted posters. On the wall, red paint dripped like blood. "Know your place." It made the local news, not because of what it was, but because of who didn't respond.
It came in a plain envelope, no return address, just my name, handwritten. Inside a letter, "You inspire us. We see you. Don't stop." No signature, but I held it like scripture. That night, I didn't feel so alone.
The story grew legs. First a local blog, then the city newspaper, then national networks. Cameras in front of the school, microphones shoved in faces. Headlines said, "Teen Leader," but few asked what it cost her.
We filed a lawsuit. Discrimination, negligence, hate crimes. The courtroom felt colder than the street outside. The school's lawyers wore smiles like masks. I didn't. When I spoke, my hands didn't shake. I told the truth about the desk, about the fire, about being made invisible.
Online threats followed. Fake accounts, hateful emails. One message read, "You'll regret this." Brielle printed it, framed it, and hung it beside the anonymous letter. Because both, she said, meant she was being heard.
It took 4 months, 4 months of silence, waiting, watching. When the judge read the verdict, I didn't cry, but my mother did, my grandma too. The court ruled in our favor. They called it symbolic, but for me it was something heavier than symbolism. It was space. It was breath. It was proof that silence isn't the only option.
The school painted the walls of the student union with murals of leaders, poets, and protesters, including one of Brielle. She didn't ask for it, but when she saw it, she smiled. Now when students pass through, they stop. They read the quotes. They ask questions. And that, she thought, was what real change feels like.
After the trial, I got letters, not just from our town, from Chicago, from Lagos, from Oslo, people who said, "Your story is our story, too." One girl wrote, "I thought I was the only one." I wrote her back, "You're never the only one."
Brielle's testimony was translated into 10 languages. Students studied it in literature classes. Activists cited her words at rallies. A theater in Berlin staged her story. A mural of her appeared in Sao Paulo, but she stayed home, still walked the same streets, still baked with her grandma.
A year later, they invited me back to the school. The principal was new. The walls were covered in art now. I stood in the hallway and saw a girl sitting where I once sat, alone. But this time, people joined her. She looked up and smiled, not at me, at them. That smile meant everything.
Justice doesn't always shout. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it marches. Sometimes it burns and is rebuilt. But when it finally speaks, it echoes. The silence between the walls was broken, and in its place, names, voices, history, and hope. Months after the trial, a local university opened an exhibit, The New Voices. It featured Brielle's testimony, the burned desk, photos from the protest, and letters from students across the country. Visitors wept. Teachers brought whole classes. One boy whispered, "I didn't know stories like mine belonged in museums."
I met Jamal again. We hadn't talked since that day on the steps. He'd cut his hair short, carried himself quieter, but when we hugged, I felt the same fire. He said, "We're not done." I said, "Not even close." We started an after-school program, the Echo Project, a place where students wrote, filmed, and spoke loudly.
Not everyone cheered. Brielle found her image defaced in a bathroom stall, flyers torn down. Rumors spread that she did it for attention, for money, for fame. But she kept going, because justice isn't popular, it's persistent.
One morning, my grandmother took my hand and led me to her garden. "All this," she said, "was once dirt and weeds. But I stayed, I dug, I cried. And now, look." She handed me a seed. "You've planted your own, just wait. It blooms slow, but it blooms strong."
Brielle began writing letters to students she would never meet, to the child who sits alone, to the teen told to be quiet, to the activist who doubts. "If you're reading this, you're not lost," she wrote. "You're rising." On the 1-year anniversary of the protest, they returned to the steps of the school, the same place where the silence broke. But this time, it was celebration, not sorrow. Students formed a circle. Drummers came. Poets read. A boy lit a fire pit and said, "This is for the voices they tried to burn."
That night, I sat on my front porch with Mama and Grandma. They didn't say much, just looked out at the street, the same street where I once walked with my head down. Mama turned to me and said, "You turned pain into something useful. You made them listen."
In the newly built wing of the school, there was a room. Plain walls, wooden floor, soft lights, no desks, only names, dozens of them, carved into glass. Some names were known, others never made the news. but all were honored.
I don't know what comes next. I still have fear. I still hear echoes. But I also hear music. I hear laughter. I hear people saying our names with pride now. And that, to me, is justice. I wrote a letter to the teacher who ignored me. I never sent it, but I needed to write it. You taught me silence, I wrote. And because of that, I learned to scream in poetry, to fight in truth. Forgiveness is a choice. I don't owe it, but I offer it for my own freedom.
In a small town in Mississippi, a girl saw Brielle's video. She showed it to her history teacher. That teacher cried. They started a race justice project in their school. In Chicago, a boy drew a mural with Brielle's face next to Rosa Parks. In Brazil, a university screened her story with Portuguese subtitles. The ripple kept spreading.
Years later, I sat at a round table with leaders, educators, judges. They wanted to hear student voices, and I smiled. I had waited for this. I didn't speak to impress them. I spoke to remind them. We were always here, even when they refused to see us.
One day, a teacher told her class, "Today's lesson is not from a book. It's from a girl who changed everything." And a photo of Brielle was pinned beside the blackboard, not just as a memory, but as curriculum.
The biggest wins aren't loud. Sometimes they come in a hallway smile, a raised hand, a teacher who says, "I hear you." The silence may return, but now I know how to answer it.
Years passed. Brielle walked through a park where children played under murals painted with brown, black, and golden faces. Laughter echoed in the air like music. She saw a little girl writing in a notebook under a tree. Curious, she leaned closer.
"What are you writing?" I asked. She said, "I'm writing a story about a girl who changed things." I smiled. "Is it a true story?" She nodded. "It will be."
Justice isn't a finish line. It's a road walked daily, sometimes paved in hope, sometimes cracked with pain, but always moving.
If you're walking it too, you're not alone. I walked it. I still do.
Her story was no longer just hers. It became part of others, a shared voice, a living legacy.
We are not broken. We are rising.
In the Museum of Justice, a new exhibit opened. Not of ancient heroes or distant wars, but of one voice, one notebook, one girl. A cracked school desk stood beneath soft lights. On it, a quote was etched. "Your silence will not protect you."
And they tried to erase me from the classroom. But now I live in every corner of it, in every student unafraid to speak, in every teacher who dares to listen. I am not a monument. I am movement. I am the breath of those who never got to speak, and I carry them with me, always.
Outside the museum, the city bustled. People passed by, unaware that just inside, a story was still unfolding in the minds of those who had seen it. And somewhere, another child picked up a pen.
We are not history. We are the ink still wet on the page, and we are not done.